It is the Syrian government, backed by Iranian forces, the Russian Air Force, Iraqi Shiites, Afghan Shiites, and Hezbollah that have the upper hand. These are the ones that have the power. And you know, I see no point in continuing to support an opposition that has already lost. It simply gets more people killed. So what I've said is this is the time now to see if we can basically negotiate a surrender, but where the losing side doesn't lose everything. And there are some things that are achievable. For example, amnesty, some opportunities for people to return home, possibly even the removal of some of the Syrian officials, obviously not including President Assad, who are responsible for the worst crimes, some international monitoring. It's not a lot, but it is a lot better than continuing a lost war. And here, Russia has a lot of leverage, and it shares some of our goals, which Iran and the Syrian regime don't. Yeah. But the Syrian regime would still like the Russian Air Force. So I think there is a possibility, no guarantee of success, but a possibility of trying to have basically a negotiated surrender that provides some terms that would allow the losing side to continue to live in Syria.
You know, the idea of a so-called negotiated surrender, particularly with an incoming president, doesn't that put the United States president on the side of Bashar Assad?
Well, let's be clear. In his very first interview as president-elect, which was with the Wall Street Journal, Donald Trump said that he wanted to work with the Assad government and with Russia to defeat the Islamic State. And yes, what's going on in Syria is absolutely horrendous. But the alternative to trying to save something is to do nothing and to have the massacre continue, the fighting continue until many more people are killed. So and sometimes when a war is lost, it is better to try to end it.
Well, let me play devil's advocate. No, Peter, you were in the Balkans and you mentioned Srebrenica. That is not what ended the war. What ended the war was the United States leading a coalition to bomb and push back the aggressors, the Bosnian Serbs. Why shouldn't that happen in this case, Peter?
Well, I mean, to be precise, it was less the United States than the United States giving a green light to the Croatian army on the ground.
On the ground, but the U.S. was in the air.
Pushed back the Serbs.
Yeah.
Well, it was
a month later, but yeah, it was. But look, the sides hadn't been defeated. In fact, the Croatians were on a roll. The Bosnians were making some progress. And there was a United States willing to come in and use military power. Clearly, that's not going to happen now. President Trump has been clear that he's going to work with Russia and with Assad. And so under those circumstances, I think it's the right thing to do is focus on what can be saved. And beyond the civilians and ending the fighting in the West, there's also the war in the East, where our allies have been the Syrian Kurds, and they have made enormous progress against the Islamic State. In fact, of all the groups fighting, they're the ones who have taken the most territory. They have inflicted the biggest defeat on the Islamic State. And the question is, what's going to happen to them
okay, so I'll get to that in a moment, because that's obviously your cause. Let me ask you, Evelyn, quickly. What Peter says is correct, that there's been no willingness to either empower a force like the Croatian army on the ground in the Balkans, or indeed to engage overhead with air power. Doesn't the Obama administration assume an enormous amount of culpability for the way this is ending?
Yes, absolutely. But the problem is, I don't think, I mean, I'm not, you know, a part of me understands, obviously, Peter's argument. I would also like a negotiated settlement. But it's not going to end the violence, because you're still going to have Islamic State. Then you're going to have the moderates still fighting Assad. So it's just going to happen in a different way, probably more like what we see in Iraq with car bombings, et cetera. So I don't think, unfortunately, this is going to bring this kind of negotiated settlement under these circumstances will bring an end to the killing.